I'm fucking horrible with technology. And I'm very much an old man in that respect. Like my wife knows way more than I do about it and has to help me with stuff. And even from the recording process, I've always been on this side of the board, not the control side of the board. So it has been incredibly frustrating to pass tracks back and forth and work on material. But we have fought through it and we have been working on it.
Rev, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Question and Answer podcast.
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Yeah, I think I caught you right. It was your mid-sip. Yeah. No, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show. And, it was so nice to have heard from you kind of out of the blue for that Alan Snodgrass episode. That was really rad.
Well, I try to say this whenever I do any sort of like interview stuff, that I really appreciate what you guys do, keeping the conversations open about what we do, as the musicians. Like, it's good to have those conversations going and spark interest. And I think I reached out to you because it was cool to see my friend Alan get a little bit of kind of respect that he deserves for working so hard as like kind of being a silent partner to all these bands for so long, It's not like he's paying his fucking bills with it. So it's nice for him to get a little bit of attention there. And he's a good guy too. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like Alan's just a really good dude. And like his heart is like totally in it for like all the great reasons. And, like you said, like that type of work just does not really pay the bills for people, not to mention, for most musicians, but, like to have him as like kind of a partner in crime is really great because he does have a great eye and he's just a really good dude,
Totally. Yeah. I was a fan of his work and then for years. And then we were introduced, I think pretty sure Lisa Root from New Noise magazine introduced me and Alan, and we instantly hit it off and became friends. And we kind of have this really kindred relationship when I'm on stage too, to where like, I kind of want to find him, and like we'll interact a little bit and he'll get good shots out of that, or we'll just both like share a smile and it keeps the show going the way I want it to go, like right. keeps me stoked. And yeah, he's just a good guy to have around. He's just a solid dude.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, anyone who may not know, this is Rev from The Drowns, also formerly of the band Success. The Drowns recently, earlier this year, put out a new album via Pirates Press Records called Under Tension, and recently have actually put 2 songs out on 2 different compilations that have also been put out by Pirates Press. One of which is the Oi 40 Years Untamed compilation, which features, gosh, I mean, you name it, the Cockney Rejects, Last Resort, The Business, Cockspar, Old Firm Casuals. I mean, just a plethora of, Oi and street punk bands. And I mean, yeah, that's great company to be in. I mean, tell me a little bit about that comp and like a little bit about that scene, because to be perfectly honest with you, like it's not really a, subgenre within punk that I'm super, adept to. I mean, I've of course heard of most of these bands, but yeah. I'm just not super familiar with like its history. And, I'd love to hear your kind of tie to it and what it kind of means to you with the Drowns.
Well, okay, so I definitely I can say that I can't be a spokesperson for the the Oi and street punk scene, but for me personally, I've always kind of loved a lot of those bands, and I don't want to pigeonhole myself at all, but I very much have a pretty broad intake of music. I try not to generalize a lot of stuff in my life, and I listen to everything, and that sounds cliche to say, but it's totally true. So with that said, my venture into punk rock from a young age always had these bands like Cockspar or like Stiff Little Fingers, and I'm a huge Clash fan. So I was always kind of listening to bands in that scene and never really, I guess, went straight into that scene. And even I would argue to say that even the Drowns are a bit of a newer take on what that was originally. You know, we're fucking happy dudes, and we're very positive, and a lot of that music was very angry due to things that were going on at the times that it was made. But I feel very privileged to be a part of it, and I will say that the minute that me and the guys really wanted to focus towards making this style of music that we loved, we were met with open arms from a lot of the older bands of that style, like Coxbar, and you and I briefly talked before we turned the camera on. That it was Coxbar themselves were so incredibly open and nice to us and gave us a lot of opportunities that really have helped us out a whole lot. And that whole family has been really welcoming, you know, like Coxbar has ties into Pirates Press Records through family. And so I feel very fortunate to be a part of it. But for me, I've always been a fan of a lot of Oi and a lot of street punk. And then the big turning point for me was Success went on tour with 7 Seconds. We went on 2 tours with them. The first one was with the Briggs, and then the second one was with Bishop's Green. And me meeting the guys in Bishop's Green really, really helped me kind of go like, fuck, I really want to play stuff like this. Because if you're not familiar with Bishop's Green, in my opinion, they're one of the best current bands doing it. And they've been doing it for years now, but they're still, to me, on the front lines of the new movement of Oi and street punk. And they're also just incredible people, super, super great folks. So I feel very fortunate to be a part of it, but for my life, it's always kind of been like, you know, a band here and a band there that were a part of it and that inspired me to want to keep playing that type of music.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you know, my initial, I guess, introduction to, you know, that group of bands would certainly be like bands like The Business, or like, you know, I guess if you're going like way back, like something like The Clash, you know, or something like that. But you know, it sounds like a lot of it was rooted in like just like a working class kind of, I guess, mentality, you know, where it came from, like this, you know, this mentality of like, man, like we're just normal people, just kind of out there, just trying to play rock and roll. Like it's no pretense, like, you know, it's not flashy. It's not about like wearing a badge or like a uniform. It's just, we're just guys out here just playing rock and roll, having a good time. And there's like a sense of community and like unity amongst those people. So it seems like almost very, just, yeah, like not pretentious at all, you know? And like,
you know, every scene has their little bits of probably, you know, like negativity or assholes and naysayers and all that. All of that aside though, like I said, it was very welcoming to join this group of, I guess, bands in a sense. You know, it's not like we got a welcoming badge or something, but you know, it was like, they've always kind of been accepting of us. And I think of my band as like the very root of that working class idea, because within 2 years we were able to do so much because we didn't stop moving. And a lot of bands don't make nearly the push and the effort that we did and the sacrifices right out of the gate to just go on the road. We went on the road with no recordings made. Our first tour, we were like, fuck it, we just need to get out there. And I think that you know, when we come home, we're bartenders and we're construction workers and we're cooks. You know, it's like we're back into the shit the minute we get home. So why be fake about what we are when we're out there? And that's a huge appeal for me in that scene, that I found that there's a lot of people like that. So
yeah, I mean, I can definitely see why a lot of people would find that very appealing. Just because it does kind of get a little old and a little long in the tooth, where, you know, if you're involved in, say, like this scene or that scene, it just starts to feel like it's all kind of fake, a little nonsense, you know?
Well, sooner or later, everything gets monotonous, you know? And I think labels in general on subcultures and things are so broad these days that they don't even matter. You know, if you and I say punk to someone who's 10 years, 15 years younger than we are, we're going to get an absolutely different explanation for what that is, you know? And so at this point, I think it's fair to say that if you're just accepting of the person next to you enjoying the same music, you should completely agree that you're in the same subculture and you should be happy about it, you know? Because you obviously have a shared kinship about what you're doing and why you're there, you know?
I definitely can vibe with that for sure. Like, you know, because like if you're like some ska purist, you know, who only listens to ska all the time, to me that seems like pretty close-minded, which is kind of contrary to some of like the whole ethics behind that whole scene. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to point to any one person or any one genre. I'm just using them as an example. But you know, I think that like you know, I'm an appreciator of all different types of music, you know. I just happen to play in like kind of a punk band, you know, but
totally.
I've been in all different types of bands. I've been in like indie rock bands. I've been in a ska band before, you know. I've been in like my first band in high school was like this kind of funk grunge kind of pseudo core hybrid thing that we didn't really know what the fuck we were doing, you know. So we were like, yeah, it's fun. That's all that matters, you know.
Yeah.
But
I was in my first band was a very third wave ska band when I was like 15, like extremely third wave, like really wanted to be the Suicide Machines.
What was the name?
A Rocket in My Pocket. Yeah,
that is awesome.
it was super fun though. We you know, like all good ska bands, we had a song about poop, and we made a toilet paper gun out of a leaf blower and a paint roller, and would fire toilet paper on the audience. It was a lot of fun. It was a perfect high school band to have.
Oh, dude, ska music, like I think in general, is kind of just made for like high schoolers, especially like people from like the pep band, you know, like
yeah.
Because, you know, I was like a saxophone player, and like my first ska band, I was playing saxophone in it, and we were called the Blast Bandits. Which, I mean, it's so funny. Like all those ska bands had like these kind of funny, dorky names, you know, like so many.
Yeah, totally.
But no, that's killer, man. And you know, so with the Drowns, and you know, having released this last record and these two new comps, or these two new songs on the comps, you know, and with everything as it's kind of gone crazy and topsy turvy over this last year, do you, I'm sure you had plans that were, you know, kind of had to go to the wayside, obviously, but going into next year, do you guys have like some like pretty firm plans in place, with fingers crossed, all things coming to a point where you can start doing it?
I mean, you know, the firm plans that we had were slowly chiseled away. So, you know, that kind of put us in this more of like, we have plans, but those plans are very like when we can implement them and not concrete, because I don't even know how you can make plans right now. You know, it's like with everything going the way that it is, travel is going to be hard, you know, no matter what. Even if it gets going, like let's say that we are able to kind of clear COVID out and start to kind of rebuild everyone as far as like a health perspective, from a health perspective, who knows, you know, like it's gonna change the society that we live in. Even going to shows, I've thought about like, you're gonna go to a show, how many people are gonna be apprehensive to stand that close to somebody, having spent a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years at this point, staying away from people and social distancing. And, you know, it's gonna, I think if you have concrete plans right now, you're probably gonna be disappointed sooner or later. So right now we're kind of up in the air, but we are ready to jump at the chance of something happening. So we have a few plans that are tentative, but I'm trying not to get my hopes up.
Well, yeah. And I think that that's a smart, you know, or I'd say wise way to approach it. I mean, we're starting, I mean, I don't know how plugged in you are, but like I start to see bands announcing tours in like Europe, or, you know, like postponed tours that are rescheduled for like some time in the summer of next year. And I can't help but kind of think to myself, I mean, I understand that like the wheels have to keep turning to a degree, and like you can always just postpone it again, but I don't know. It's like you're kind of getting people's hopes up again.
Yeah. And you know, our like speaking of like, you know, Europe tours, we were supposed to go on a tour in August in Europe, and our Euro agent, we were talking about what's going to go on next year and if we can reschedule. And he's trying to protect us. And he was very like, I don't know, dude, like I hope, but who knows at this point. So I think playing it safe and doing what we've been doing, like staying home and trying to work on new material and trying to have something ready to push when you are able to, I think is probably a band's best maneuver right now.
Yeah. Now during this time, have you guys been able to get together? I mean, you obviously maybe are not getting together, but have you been able to collaborate on like new material and like demoing and that kind of stuff?
Yes, and I will tell you that even though I obviously have social media and you and I are talking via the internet right now, I'm fucking horrible with technology. And I'm very much an old man in that respect. Like my wife knows way more than I do about it and has to help me with stuff. And even from the recording process, I've always been on this side of the board, not the control side of the board. So it has been incredibly frustrating to pass tracks back and forth and work on material, but we have fought through it and we have been working on it. But for me personally, I can't stand it, and I can't wait till I'm just in a studio again, you know?
Yeah, it certainly does not have the same kind of magic. I mean, I know that for myself, you know, I have the luxury of having at least one band member who literally lives right above me, you know?
Oh shit.
So,
Yeah.
and you know, we still aren't getting together because we're playing safe, but at the same time, you know, it's a little bit easier for us to kind of trade ideas, because like I can just go outside and I can be like, hey man, you know, like what about this idea or something like that. But yeah, I definitely can understand like why that would be frustrating and like not nearly as I guess like, yeah, like you said, like magical and like workable, especially, you know, and technology does have its limitations too. I mean, sometimes you can't get the same message across, you know? And like, for instance, you're the singer, do you write the lyrics as well? Like all of them?
So the Drowns has two singers and two songwriters.
Oh,
So
I see.
Andy Wiley and I trade off. And if one positive take of all of this technology shit we've had to do is it's kind of focused us more on songwriting, and we'll create something and send it to the other one, and then there's a lot more back and forth than just meeting up to practice and being like, I don't know, that sounds pretty good, you know. And that's if for a positive takeaway, you know, that's a good thing, you know. I'm happy about that. It's focused us more on songwriting, but we're kind of getting, we have a batch of songs we're kind of getting to the end of being ready to take into the studio when we're available to. And I'm actually, I think it's helped as much as it's been a horribly stressful process. I think it's helped because we're thinking more about it more than ever, because we're sending it back and forth and everybody's hearing it tons of times. Whereas normally we just jam and everyone's loud and, you know, we're like, oh, that sounds really, really cool. And also lyrics. I've even been sending lyrics for the first time back and forth with Andy a lot more than I ever have. And I'm pretty good at writing a hook, and he's really, really good at tying all the pieces together word wise. He's a wordsmith and a poet. So it's forced us to have to play to each other's strengths. And I think that's going to make these new songs really good. I have nothing to sell yet, and I feel like that was a pretty good pitch. But I feel like these new songs are really, really great because of these limitations through technology.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that you can definitely take away as a positive, is that you are able to spend a little bit more time honing your craft, you know, as opposed to, like you said, just getting into a room and being like, yeah, that sounds great, and then we're just going to move forward with it, which is absolutely fine too. I mean, that's how bands have been doing it for forever. But
for sure,
I mean, I can say for sure that like I am dreadfully missing that vibe of being in the same room with each other. I mean, I crave it so much, you know. And
yeah, well, I also play off of them a lot, and the guys that I'm in a band, you know, you create a really, it's almost like this like metaphysical kind of like feeling, feeding off of each other, and I definitely miss that. You're correct on that. There's something that it takes some of the fun away to do it this way.
Definitely. But yeah, and you guys released a video kind of about midway through the year. And I got to say, like, it was a video that I kind of I felt hit all the right buttons at the perfect time, because it came out like during this. I know that for myself, this whole experience has kind of come up in waves, you know, where for a while I was feeling okay. And then I was like, I'm really kind of feeling like a little sad and depressed. I miss my friends. And then I kind of got okay again. And then I'm feeling it again, and then blah. But, you know, it hit me. I got to see it at a time where I was feeling a little bit low, but it's this really great video, and we'll show it at the end of the video, where it seems like this really cool gathering amongst friends, and I just thought that was really, really nice that you guys were able to put that out at that time. And so you're saying that you shot that just before everything kind of went to hell, right?
Yeah, totally. We didn't know we were going to be putting out a video of friends getting together and being happy that was going to remind friends of that because that was going to be taken away. We had no clue. It was such a simple thought process for me. It was my idea. And I was like, I got a buddy who owns a record store. I love his record store. I love my buddy. I would love to play in this tiny, and it's a smaller record store. I was like, me and the guy should play in there, and we should have all our friends come in and have a good time. And then I just happened to also be good friends with the landlord. And I was like, hey, can I get on the roof and play a guitar solo? And he was like, yeah, totally. So it all kind of worked out. We weren't thinking big picture at all. It was more like I wanted to show off my buddy's awesome record store on the street that I work on in the neighborhood I've been in for, 2 decades. So it was more just like, hey, look at all this cool shit that goes on in our lives. It was kind of like what the video was supposed to be. But a lot of people told me exactly what you just did, where they were like, thank you so much. It just reminds me that we're going to get through this. And that was unintentional, but I'm incredibly happy about it. So thank you for saying those nice things.
No, dude, I really enjoyed that video, and the song is great too. I mean, one of the things that I mentioned to you before we turned the camera on was that, I kept hearing your guys' name over and over and over, and I still haven't seen you guys perform yet, which is a shame because I know that you've played the Bay Area several times. Something I wanted to kind of briefly touch on. I guess you guys played at the DNA Lounge, and didn't your van get broken into like at that show?
Yeah.
Oh, man, what a
we
drag.
got robbed. Yeah, so Success has been robbed in the Bay Area before too, unfortunately. But it wasn't good for our drummer. It was a bag full of his like medicine and some technology that was taken. But luckily, that was it. It was just one bag that was taken, and the window was smashed. But we actually had a ton of friends pitch in and be like, "Let us help you pay for the window." And do you remember Biff Naked?
Oh,
from
sure.
Canada.
Yeah.
So she actually reposted that story and got a bunch of people that were just like, I'm only here sending money because Biff Naked told me to. And I was like, oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's funny how that works out.
It could have been so much worse, man. It could have been, and nobody was hurt, which fucking ruled. So.
Well, and it's crazy. Like, so, I mean, you've obviously played in the Bay Area several times over the years. That area of San Francisco is like notorious for break-ins, man. Like I've had my car broken into. I've had several friends have their cars broken into, and it's all like kind of around that area, right near the DNA Lounge and Slim's. So, and then so last year you guys also got to perform on an aircraft carrier in Alameda for this Rock the Ship thing that Pirates Press put together. I mean, tell me a little bit about that, man. I'm bummed I didn't get to go. I'm trying to remember what it was that why I couldn't go, but I remember feeling like I should have gone to that, and I just didn't end up going. But man, like that was a crazy lineup too. I mean, there were a ton of great bands on that.
Yeah, and it was just incredible. The experience of like, I actually took video. My wife came with me, and my mother actually flew down too. And I say that like people's mothers don't normally do that. My mom is a rocker; she's totally down. So, I had to get there early, and so I took a cab from our hotel to the ship, and I had to pull my phone out because I was slowly driving in this cab to this monstrous fucking ship that just kept getting bigger and bigger the closer we got, and it was like this very like ominous, like almost kind of gaudy experience to like get there. And there's a massive ship, and on the back, Pirates Press had put a huge banner with Cockspar lyrics hanging off the back of the ship. And it was just, I was like, this is surreal. It's a fucking dream right now. So it was an incredible show, and it was cool to see so many people. And that was a weird time for us because we had just gotten back from a tour in Japan, and we were in Japan for a couple weeks. And the last 3 or 4 days, we didn't know if we were going to make it because we were stuck in a natural disaster. We were in a typhoon. And so, and in that typhoon in Tokyo, we had to be evacuated to an emergency shelter. And it was nuts. And we were like, who knows if we're going to make it home. And we were supposed to, if it wasn't for the typhoon, we were going to be in Okinawa, and our flight was out of there. So we also had to rearrange flights and fly to Osaka and get a quick flight from there, and then hopefully get a flight home. And we were able to work it out. So we actually didn't even know if we were going to make Rock the Ship. And if I had not been able to make it and then saw the photos, it would have fucking killed me. Because it was just it was so many people that I love in one area enjoying something special. You know, I don't know how many times you're ever going to hear that folks of punk rock or of oi or of any subgenre, metal bands even, if they're ever going to be playing on a battleship, you know, like it's on an aircraft carrier. It was just something incredibly monumental to be a part of, and everybody had a great time. And then at the very end, Cox Bar killed it, and it was one of the best sets I've ever seen them. So it was awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a pretty glorious like thing to be able to be a part of. And I mean, I have a few friends who also performed that day, like Matt Cotty from the band Monster Squad. And you know, it sounded like they had a blast. And yeah, I know a few people that actually went to the show, and like they said, it was fantastic. So I'm bummed that I didn't get to go, but you know, hopefully maybe Pirates Press will do something like that again. I mean, hopefully they'll make it like an annual event, like when things come back together.
I will say a real quick story. My favorite part of that whole day, beyond all these incredible experiences, it's like looking back, they loaded my gear into one area and they're like, go upstairs and we'll bring it up to you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I put my guitar on this like little platform, and I walk upstairs, and they're slowly raising my guitar and a bunch of other gear to me. And I look at the guy next to me, and I give him a weird look. He works on the ship, and he gave me a look and was like, yeah, this elevator is normally for bombs. And it was like a small elevator that was specifically for like weapons and things. And my guitar's coming up on it. I was like, this is so fucking surreal right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so weird, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. My dad, actually, when he was in the Navy, worked on the Hornet, I want to say. And like I remember him telling me stories about like being on like an aircraft carrier and it just being gnarly, you know. It's just they're giant, they're enormous.
Yeah, I can't. Man. And you know, we got to go in a little bit of like the kind of the back areas that other people didn't get to go into, and I was lost a little bit. You know, it's a moving city. It's a city on the water. It's kind of insane how massive they are and how many compartments they are, and like the old dudes that were there who served on the ship who now kind of volunteer to like give tours and show people around were really cool too, surprisingly. I actually thought they were going to be more judgmental than they were, and that was a fault of mine, but they were really, really great. And it was super fun to talk to some of them about like the ship's history and stuff.
Yeah, see, I mean, that in and of itself is like such an experience, you know, to be able to like learn firsthand from like those guys that were there and like doing that stuff. I mean, that's really cool, man. But,
yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, but you know, I wanted to kind of briefly touch on like the Seattle kind of music scene a little bit. So, you know, both the Drowns and Success are from that area. And, you know, I honestly haven't really been keeping too much tabs on, you know, the music that's been coming out of that area. So you're really one of the only, I guess, like punk rock bands that I know of really that are current. Tell me about some other bands like in the Seattle area that might be worth like kind of checking out.
Well, I mean, I would assume if people are familiar with my band, they would know Noise, and Noise is from Tacoma, which is not far from us. There's a band from here that I love called Crucial Change that I don't think anyone really knows about. No offense to those guys. They're friends of mine, but they're not very active, but they do put out some really good records. As far as like just punk bands, I think to me, the quintessential band of the last 20 years that isn't together anymore is a band called The Damage Done, which most people don't know about, but it's the Koreski brothers, and they're in different bands. Connor Koreski actually lives in the Bay Area, but they've been in different bands over the years and done different projects. I played in a project with the singer of the band for a little while, but The Damage Done to me is like one of the best punk bands to ever come out of here. And the Hollow Points, I don't know if you remember that band at all, but the Hollow Points were on Disaster Records, I think, back in the day. And I know they toured with The Business, and those guys are good friends, and they're a great band from up here. But also, I mean, if you go back in the history, you've got bands like the Gits, you know, that are fucking incredible, and all these bands that influence people over the years. Sure.
And so you grew up in Seattle?
So I was born here, and then my dad was in the Army, and so we moved every 3 years. I lived in Alaska, Germany, and Virginia, and then came back here because my parents are originally from the suburbs here. I was born in Tacoma.
Oh, I see. Now, I'm not sure how old you are. I'm 42, but like, I remember back in, my junior high and high school years, like Seattle kind of being like, fuck, like the hot music was from Seattle. So like, all the sub pop shit and like all that stuff. Were you exposed to that growing up?
Briefly, because I got here in basically in the 8th grade. And I was, at that point, I was already kind of feeling out punk rock and ska. And I will say that most of the kids who were into like the grungier stuff, or like the kids in the Sonic Youth t-shirts, were usually kind of elitist assholes. But I also grew up in I went to high school where my grandmother is from, in Enumclaw, Washington, which is like a small farming town outside of Mount Rainier. So, those folks just listened to the radio mostly. It wasn't a whole lot of people looking for other stuff musically. So I can't judge the whole scene on that, but I can say that most of the Nirvana kids were fucking annoying, and like definitely people I didn't hang out with. And I usually got in arguments with a lot of those folks.
Yeah. I mean, I want to imagine that being there during like that whole time was like this rad, like kind of magical thing. But like in hindsight, I can kind of see how for the people that actually lived there, it probably was just kind of silly, where like, all of a sudden, like all eyes are on Seattle, and it's like everyone's magic and every band is rad and everyone's so full of shit. And it's like, we're just playing music, dude. Like we're just doing our shit and having fun. I mean, you can't deny that bands like, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains just, like they blew up and like they became these big deals. And then you even had like bands like the Super Suckers and Mudhoney, and like all those smaller tiered bands who were still very influential, but they didn't have the big name associated with them. But that tie to the punk rock thing, I think, is what helped kind of bridge that gap. And like, so you can have like a little bit of a fluidity within like the genres with that. But to your point, I can definitely see why like the people who were all about like the Sonic Youths and like, the pretentious kind of sub pop bands out of that era were probably more, I guess, quote unquote, annoying than actually.
Well, and the ones that I was talking to would have been on the latter end of that, still holding on to that golden era, years before. So it was, I just never really had, I have a lot of friends who were in bands from that era, and I got some friends that got really famous during that era. And they're just like anything else. They're good memories and bad memories that people have. But these days it's not the same. It's very different these days. And the city is drastically different. If anyone ever wants a good view on what the real kind of Seattle take on the music at that time, like the kind of grungy era, if you want a good read or a good watch, the documentary Hype there was a lot of like people in there being like, this is a fucking joke, like, and like they would play pranks on record labels and stuff. Like it was, anyone who tried to like find out what a band was, they would make up fake band names at Sub Pop, and like send them down a rabbit hole trying to find this band that doesn't exist. It's a weird time, and I know a lot of those folks, but I never really got into it.
I remember watching that documentary in I think it was like a couple of years after college, and just being like, man, that's rad. Like, and I'm not trying to like say that I knew better or like whatever, because I mean, there's a lot of those bands that I still absolutely love. Like, I don't know if you caught it, or if you were even a fan, but Mopop just did this thing where they gave Alice in Chains like some award, like it was like a lifetime achievement award or something like that.
Yeah, I think I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, man, I thought that was really well done, and like I happen to be a big fan of theirs, so I thought it was really well deserved. But
cool.
But yeah, I mean, the music scene up there is so rich, and shoot, over the last like 20 plus years post grunge, there's been so many great bands that I can speak to, like Minus the Bear and Botch and like These Arms Are Snakes and like
Harkonnen.
There's a bunch that I could name,
Harkonnen all in that same scene was really, really incredible. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's another great band that I always try to tell people about called Helms Ali, that, man,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah,
rule. Yeah. I've seen them
totally.
a few times, and they're just
Yeah,
great.
Ben's other band. He was in Helmsley and Harkonnen.
Right.
Yeah,
He makes
yeah,
those Varellen amps. Yeah.
yeah. He's a really, really, really good dude too.
Yeah.
Like in when Success was first starting out, if I ever had like amp problems, I would like call him and he would like homie hook up repairs for me. He was always been a really, really solid dude.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I have some good friends up there who were involved in like the music scene. I'm not sure if you know Kevin Sir. He runs Artist Home. They do a couple of festivals up there. Really good guy. He used to be really
Cool.
involved in like the punk scene down here in Sacramento. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the areas that I always kind of thought that I would want to move to, but just never really pulled the trigger. And yeah, like you said, I'm sure that it's changed somewhat for the worse over the years. I mean, you posted something on Facebook the other day with that car wash sign coming down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's going in a museum now, which is cool, but also it's like, I mean, it's been years of that since kind of, I don't want to specifically blame Amazon, but the boom of the amount of employees that they brought here over the past 10 years has drastically changed the landscape. It's been going on for years. And, I have great memories of the city that I love, and I still do love this city a whole lot, but it is pretty different these days. There are still neighborhoods, though, like you and I talked about Georgetown, and where we filmed that video was in Georgetown Records. You can still find little pockets of these kind of like old school, very pro art, very pro, happiness communities. And like, yeah, I still love this city a whole lot. It's also just fucking beautiful here. A normal saying here is the mountain's out today. Like if there's, if the clouds aren't blocking it, you can see Mount Rainier, and it still hits me every time. I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So one of the things that I really wanted to touch on was, so you guys have been working with Pirates Press pretty much since the band has come out, right?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. Our last two releases were with them. We kind of, with two other friends, we put out our first record on our own. But yeah, Pirates Press is, I mean, basically the most of the last 2 years have been working directly with them.
Yeah, and so the experience with working with them has been really, really positive, I would imagine. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, but I don't want anything to change. Like they've been the perfect label because they not only support us, but they support the consumer. They want to make records that, not just from a musical standpoint, but from a packaging and a visual standpoint and the way that you buy it. They want all of that experience to be beneficial for everyone involved. And I can't name another label in the punk rock world that necessarily does that right now. And I'm not trying to shit talk anybody, but I do feel strongly that they're really spearheading this, like almost a revival of like the art needs to be good and the packaging needs to be good. And it's a whole experience to have that record in your hand. And I think they're bringing that idea back. And as a record collector, I fucking love that. And I'm beyond the fact that they're just supportive, great, very positive people who still believe in rock and roll, which is getting harder and harder to find. I'm just happy to be on the label just because they care so much about the music they put out. So,
yeah, I mean, I know that they are pretty plugged in with like some really rad ska bands. Like they just released like this Agrolites box set.
yeah,
and,
hell
like,
yeah.
worked with like the Slackers, and I know that they've released some stuff with like Rancid and like even bands like Bad Cop, and they're yeah. I'm very interested to see like what's gonna come down the pike for them, because historically it seems like they've mostly stuck within like that kind of oi street punk scene, but they've seemed to be opening the doors a little bit more. Like one of the albums that they put out over the last couple of years that I really love is like that new Charger album.
Yeah, hell yeah. It's so good.
I love Charger. That stuff's great.
Yeah, man. And there's all those dudes in that band are rad. And we've been able to play with them a couple of times now. And man, it just rips. Like if you're a fan of like Motorhead or like any sort of like kind of speed thrashy metal, like man, it rips. And they're great live too. It's like they're one of those bands kind of like Slayer that just start here and then they fucking end at the same level. It's like go, go, go ending, and it's fucking awesome to be there and be a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of like one of the last questions that I like to throw out to people is, and I know it's kind of a loaded question, but I think I gave you a heads up on it, is if you had to pick 5 records to kind of stick with you for the rest of your life, what would they be?
I took notes.
Okay.
Because if we're friends on social media. If someone follows me, they'll know that like I do talk a lot about bands that I like and bands I don't like, and I try to have conversations about music. I got shit on recently for I posted a photo of I made a T-shirt from like a cell phone app that just says the Beatles are only okay, and like people shit all over me. And I don't dislike the Beatles, but I thought the concept of them only being okay was fine, and I thought it was funny that it angered people. I try not to press buttons too much, but I do like to have the open conversation. So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared. I would say the Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope, is Desert Island, like absolutely a record that I love and I adore and has shaped me in a lot of ways. Slade's Slade album with the question mark at the end. I don't know if you're familiar with that band, but it's like
I think
kind
so.
of like the precursor to Cheap Trick, but from England is an easy way to describe it to someone.
Okay.
It's like a very like bobber rock and roll kind of glammy rock and roll band.
The name definitely sounds familiar. I'm having a hard time hearing it, so but the name is definitely ringing a bell. Yeah.
I mean, Come On Feel the Noise, right? Like, that song?
Yes. Yeah.
So it was originally their song and then was very changed by Quiet Riot, but
okay.
It's just like glammy and fun rock and roll and like super over the top, and they wore like crazy fucking outfits and they like were just ridiculous. And you should do a deep dive on that band. I'll send you some links. Even if you don't like the music, it's fun just to learn about how wacky they were.
Sure.
One of my all-time favorite records is Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros Street Core. I have that album cover tattooed on the back of my neck. That record hit me at the perfect time in my life, and all the songs are great. Even the Bob Marley cover that I feel like any troll would jump to make fun of is fucking great. It's a really good version of Revolution song. I'm also a big jazz guy. Like I listen to a lot of jazz, and Wes Montgomery's A Day in the Life is an incredible album. And I only found Wes Montgomery recently. I was putting together a jazz playlist at the end of the night when I bartend. Sometimes when I'm home, I bartend and I do construction work. And at the end of the night, when I want people to start mellowing out and get out of the bar so I can clean up and go home, I used to put on the first Tom Waits record because it's super mellow and it's called Closing Time, aptly enough. But I started putting on this jazz playlist, and then I started branching out from there. And as I was doing the books at night or cleaning up the bar, I would start to just kind of let Spotify, if you let a playlist go, they'll just kind of like assume something that you might like next. And that's how I heard a song by Wes Montgomery, and I was like, really got into his stuff. And lately that's been on constant rotation for me. It's just a beautiful record. He's an incredible jazz guitar player with a crazy good story too.
Yeah, Montgomery's great. Yeah,
man, he's so good. And I feel like a jerk that I hadn't found him until this late in my life. I know the Brubecks and the Coltrane's, and I played jazz guitar in high school, but it never found me until now. And I'm so happy that it did, because now I can't stop listening to his stuff.
Well, it's kind of the beauty of music, though, especially like music that's been fortunate enough to be captured, from long gone eras like that, where,
totally.
like we have it in perpetuity because somebody thought to capture it on celluloid, or wax or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's tons of bands that I can speak to where I didn't hear about it until way after the fact. And I'm just like, oh man, where was I?
Yeah, exactly. And the Wes Montgomery thing is really cool, because when I started to read, I'm a nerd. So when I find out about an artist, I read their whole background, and I try to find anything else they play it on and any other bands they had. And his story was really incredible too, that he like never learned how to read music. He played with his thumb. He looks ridiculous when he plays. Like his the technique looks like it shouldn't work and sound good, and it sounds incredible. But he had been chastised by other jazz musicians for not knowing how to read music. And I think it really added a really creative element to his style. And not to get too nerdy on it, but he does a lot of solos with chords, double stops, and triads moving up and down the neck that I think is so appealing to my ears. That I really fell for his music.
That's rad.
And then the special self-titled album, you can't go wrong. That one's gonna hit home for I think most people. So
Yeah, I mean, dude, the specials, I don't think it gets much better than that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No.
I
And
mean,
we were talking about like the subgenres and stuff, and that band can go all across them. You know, you can have like, you know, Skins who are like purists about ska that love that band, but then you can have like, you know, tough punk rock kids who are like, oh yeah, but I love the specials. You know, it's like
right.
even I know like metal dudes who were like, hey, don't put on any fucking ska unless it's the specials, then we're fine. You know,
Right. Yeah, it is funny how that works out sometimes with certain bands within certain genres. Yeah, that's funny. Well, shit, Aaron, it's been really nice to have you on the show, man. You know, I'm so glad that, you know, things are going all right for you, you know, given that, you know, you had a little bit of a rocky, you know, year, but, you know, it's coming towards an end, thank God. And like, we'll move on to the next year.
fuck.
And let's hope that, you know, we get some forward movement with everything and we get back to shows. And I'm excited to hear the new material that you guys are putting together. Hopefully you can record it soon. And we're going to end the show with that video we talked about. And, you know, hit me up anytime, man. It'd be great to chat, just bullshit sometime.
I will, brother. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Keeping me from moving.